So it's quite possible that some of you are going to be a little bit unhappy about this video. The reason being, this video is all about my changing from Nikon to Sony. And I'll try and keep it fairly brief, but why I'm doing it, what my experiences are up until this point, and whilst some of this might be me just simply trying to justify what I'm doing, I'll also try and make it quite factual and give you my thoughts and observations about moving from Nikon to Sony. Very quickly, brief history. If you want the full history, go back through my videos, subscribe, and you can watch all the previous videos and find out the history. But I've been a wedding photographer since 2013, photographed well over 250 weddings. I've shot Nikon right from the beginning. I first got my first Nikon was 1990. Started shooting, as I say, 2013, shooting weddings with a D700. I think that was all I had, because for a couple of weddings I only had one camera. That's a no-no. And then up until 2018, when I was using D750 and a D800. Mirrorless cameras were becoming the thing. Sony had just come out with their A7 III, and the future definitely looked mirrorless. I waited for Nikon to come out with the Z6, their mirrorless camera. I went along to my local dealer and tried it on like the week it came out, and excuse me, but it was shit. One card was which I knew about, so that was almost certainly a no-no, but the autofocus was unbelievably bad. My D750 was light years better. So I decided if I was going to go mirrorless and that was the future, then I needed to go to Sony. So at that point, right at the end of 2018, I changed most of my Nikon gear, not all of it, but most of it, sold that and got the A7 III, some lenses, and shot weddings in 2019 and 2020 with Sony. Obviously 2020 was the first year of COVID, so I didn't do that many weddings then. Towards the end of 2020, Nikon came out with the D780 and the Z5, which seemed to be what the Z6 II should have been. 2 card slots. The AF on the Z5 was streets ahead of what the Z6 II was initially, and so I then favoured Nikon again and went back to Nikon. I'm just looking for the perfect solution. That's why I change. And up until now, and maybe even now, the perfect solution hasn't presented itself. Hence why I keep looking. So 2021, shooting with the D780 and the Z5. Which was actually a pretty good combination. The Z5 was not anywhere near as good as the Sony A7 III in pretty well every respect, but it went well with the D780. My D780 was the main camera, and of course the D780 has got it's 2 cameras in one. It's got the mirrorless screen at the back, and I found it really good. And in fact, even though this video is all about changing from Nikon to Sony, this guy is staying with me. Yeah, I'm probably going to have that for forever. I just love the D780. It is so good at what it does. It just does everything brilliantly for me. Remember, all this is me as a wedding photographer. I'm not talking wildlife or action, sports, landscape, weddings. Now, of course, weddings do include a lot of those things anyway, so I do need a very versatile camera and lenses and so on. But as I say, wedding photographer. So anyway, continuing on. So Nikon, then I came out with the Z6 II, so I got that. And that was barely any better than the Z5. The only thing it had was a higher frame rate. The backside illuminated sensor made no difference that I could see for 99.8% of the shots. And again, the Z6 II was still way behind, and even though they'd done I think one update to the AF on the Z6 II, it's still way behind the A7 III that I had back in 2019. When I came back from Sony to Nikon, to mirrorless Nikon, I was anticipating, kind of took it for granted, that Nikon would come out with some decent lenses that I could use. Obviously, right at the beginning, there was very few around. They've failed me hugely. My opinion. I do not like any of their lenses that I can use as a wedding photographer. For instance, this thing, the 50 1.8 Z mount lens. It looks plasticky, it sounds plasticky, it feels plasticky. The images it gives me are plasticky. I do not like it, period. Hence, I've ended up shooting on the FTC adapter and using my old F-mount lenses. And I got to a point a few months ago thinking, what is this all about? When are Nikon going to come up with gear that I want, that gives me my perfect solution that I'm looking for? I want 1.4 lenses like the F-mount, but an up-to-date version of that. I don't want prosumer sort of dumbed down 1.8 lenses. And you might disagree, you might think your 51.8 is absolutely brilliant, but for me, for my wedding photography, it's not what I'm looking for. So yeah, they've got the 1.2 primes, but seriously, I mean, we're looking at £2,500 each. I want a 24, 35, 50 and 85. You're looking at 10 grand for lenses. And I mean, they weigh a ton. They're absolutely massive. I can't carry 4 of those around for 8 or 9 hours at a wedding. It's just stupid. What I want, and what I've now got, and I used 2 days ago at my first wedding with this gear, what I want is something like this. This is the Sony 35 1.4 G Master lens. Even the lens hood feels so much better than the Nikon. It's got a little button that locks it in place. It fits. It doesn't feel plasticky. We've got an aperture ring. I can actually change the aperture on the lens like I used to when I was a kid. It's just gorgeous, and the images, well, I'll post a few up sort of in a minute during this video from this that I took on the wedding on Saturday. That's what I'm looking for. So a couple of weeks ago, I decided to get the A9 II and the A7 IV on a kind of tryout basis. Obviously I need one lens, and that 35 is the only Sony lens I've got at the moment. So let me now tell you what my thoughts are about the wedding I did on Saturday, where I had the Z8 with the 50, the 24 and the 85, and the 35 being provided by the Sony A7 II or the A7 IV with the 35 1.4 G Master. When I got the Z8, which was very soon after it came out, I expected it to solve all my problems that I had with the Z6 II. Mainly the AF, because the autofocus on the Z6 II for photographing people at weddings where they're moving, stuff's happening all the time, where you need to be able to do it quickly, reliably. The Z6 II just doesn't do that. So I hope the Z8 would come up with a solution for that, and it did. I cannot argue. For focusing, it is brilliant, but I still have 4 buttons assigned to focusing. I have one for focusing just on faces, and it will track a face all over the place. But of course there are times when I don't want to focus on a face, I want to focus on something else. So I've got another button set up to focus on and track things without face detection turned on. Occasionally, and I've done 25 or so weddings with this now, so I've got to know it pretty well. Occasionally even that doesn't work. It doesn't seem to lock on focus. So I've got another button, one of the front buttons, assigned to D9. So it's not track. Well, it does track, but it's because it's dynamic 9, but it works a lot more like a spot focus. So I could use that for occasional things like maybe photographing the rings, something like that. And then I've got another one where if I'm taking a shot of a group and I just want to hold the camera up, point it and shoot, and know that I've got something in focus, I've got a wide area button set up as well, because I found that if I use the face tracking box, unless I move it and actually get it over someone's face, if I happen to point it in between someone's face, or I've got it in the wrong place and it's pointing at a bush, it won't focus, it won't pick up anything. So for holding it up here and just sort of spraying and praying, it didn't work. So the wide area. So I've got 4 buttons, which is great because it's customizable. You can do that, and it's not a huge deal. Going to the Sony, and my comments about the Sony refer to both the A9 II and the A7 IV, because in the limited use I've had of them, I can't actually see a difference as far as the AF goes. The A9 II has got a bit more, another dial. It's got a faster burst rate. It shoots silently without any, well, supposedly without any banding issues that the A7 IV could have, because this has got much faster readout because it's a stack sensor. Anyway, stuff like that. Focus on this. Obviously I've used a Sony in the past, some while ago, so I know something about the focus system. These two only arrived 2 days before the wedding, so I didn't have long to set them up and play around with them. But I set the focusing up so that I've got the front, the shutter set to tracking with face detect on, and I've got the back button focus set to tracking without face detect turned on. And I had 0 problems focusing. I've started to edit the photos. I've been through them. I think there was 1,400 photos in all that I took. And so far, I haven't found a shot that isn't tack sharp. And I mean, this lens and camera combination, when I say tack sharp, I mean the absolute pinnacle of what I might be able to produce with the Z8 and this 1.8 thing. But many of the shots are just absolutely on a different level. I mean, with a 35, it's not a portrait lens, is it? And I'm shooting maybe a group of 2 or 3 people. I put the focus point on one of those people, and they're, I've got full bodies in there. They're not, even their bodies, full length, aren't taking up the whole frame. I focus on one of the faces and the eye detect box pops up, so it's focused. I get the composition, I take the shot, and I look at it in Lightroom and I zoom in 100%, and this person's face, even though they're quite some distance away and part of a group, I can count their eyelashes. It is amazing. It is stunning. It's hopefully going to be the perfect solution that I've been looking for all these years, but I don't promise, but I hope it is. So lens wise, they've got everything I want, Sony. As I say, they've got the full prime lenses, and I'll be shooting with the 2 cameras, the A9 and the A7 IV, both of which are, well, certainly the A9 II and the Z8 I see as being equivalent cameras. Price wise, in fact, the A9 II was a little bit more than the Z8 up until a few weeks ago when the A9 III came out, and then the A9 II started to get discounted, which was nice because that's when I bought it. But they're both so far ahead of the Nikon Z2. Okay, Z3 is coming out probably early next year, but I seem to have been waiting forever for Nikon to catch up with other people, and I'm just fed up with it. So my plans are that we're going to have 2 cameras, 2 Sonys, 4 lenses. At some point I might get a 16 to 35 zoom, but I don't use that very much, and that will be my gear setup. In the past, my box over here, and there's one over there with my cameras and lenses in, it was a case before a wedding of sitting there and I'd look at and say, well, what am I going to take? Am I going to take? I'll take both the mirrorless, obviously the Z8 and the Z6 II, but I'll take the 780 because it just works. If I get in a situation, say I'm going out on a boat, a rowing boat, on a pond with a couple to get some shots in a boat, and I really can only take one camera. I don't want to take bags and all that sort of thing. Take one camera and one lens. I would go for the 780 over the Z8 because I just know that I'm not going to have to fiddle with the focus. I know that it's going to get it absolutely reliably. It just does the job, and that shouldn't be something that I have to think about. I should just be able to pick up a camera, Sony, and know that that's going to do the job. I shouldn't have to think. The gear shouldn't be part of the process. Up until this week, I've got a box full of lenses which are going off to MPB shortly, and the Z8 is going to MPB, and the Sony lenses are coming. But as I was saying, I looked over there, and am I going to take all the F-mount lenses? Do I take all the Z-mount lenses? Do I take both? Quite often did that because I couldn't make my mind up about what I was going to take. And it was always a case of thinking about what gear I'm going to take. If I've got two Sony cameras and 4 lenses, 2 of them on the camera, 2 of them in the camera bag, I'm done. I've got everything I could possibly wish for to photograph a wedding. And I can think about the wedding, the shots, rather than the gear. So I'm sorry, Nikon, you failed me, and it's goodbye. Apart from my faithful D780, and of course another one I'll never get rid of is my D700, which still gives beautiful images as well, but doesn't come to weddings. So that's my update, my interim update, as I'm actually changing over. It is December. I have got one more wedding before Christmas. I've got a couple of boudoir shoots, and then we're into January, and I think I've got 3 or 4 weddings, I think, in January. So at some point in the next month or so, I'll do a more in detail look at how I've got on, how basically a Nikon user has got on with Sony cameras, what I like about them after doing a couple of more weddings, what I don't like. Do I regret the decision? Watch this space, subscribe, and I'll tell you how it all goes. Thanks for watching.